Welcome to NeoCon's 2025 CEU session, AIA A&D Materials Pledge, From Aspiration to Action. Presenting are Kathleen Lane, Lana Rarick, Tanya Eagle, and Jay Hindmarsh. As a reminder, to earn CEU credit, attendees must stay logged on for 60 minutes and complete the 10-question quiz after the session.
Welcome to this 2025 NeoCon virtual session on the AIA Architecture and Design Materials Pledge, From Aspiration to Action Through Holistic Materials Specification. My name is Kathleen Lane, and I'm the Managing Director of AIA's Climate Action and Design Excellence programs. We offer knowledge and resources to AIA's 100,000 members on integrating climate action into everyday design practice to achieving outcomes supporting zero carbon, healthy, resilient, and equitable built environment. We're very glad you've joined us, whether you're an architect, interior designer, product manufacturer, or other AEC professional. We welcome you to utilize AIA's climate action resources, and we hope you'll join AIA as an allied member to build your networks and knowledge. I'd like to welcome our speakers who have a broad range of expertise in materials health and sustainability, and who are leaders in AIA's A&D Materials Pledge Working Group. Lana Rarick is Principal and Sustainable Materials Lead at ZGF Architects. Tanya Eagle is Director and Sustainable Buildings Team Lead at JLL. And Jay Hindmarsh is Sustainability Services Lead at the Miller Hull Partnership. In this session, we'll share more information about AIA's A&D Materials Pledge, a commitment program for architecture and design firms who pledge to support 5 fundamental program areas: human health, climate health, ecosystem health, and social health and equity in a circular economy. Our speakers will show how the pledge is helping design firms move from these aspirational statements to meaningful action. We want you to take away practical steps that you can apply to guide and track progress to implement your materials goals in practice. We'll review results of the first reporting cycle for the materials pledge and share resources on how you can engage. Even if you don't join the pledge, there are benefits for the culture of your architecture or interior design firm or design practice, and for product and project selection and tracking. And now I'll turn it over to Lana Rarick to delve into the A&D Materials Pledge.
Thank you, Kathleen. I'm really excited to be here today and to present to you. It was kind of a career highlight to have been chair of the AIA Materials Knowledge Working Group when we created the Materials Pledge. So I'm going to do a little bit of level setting and talking about how we got here, why we created the Materials Pledge, and the kind of the current landscape within which that Materials Pledge exists. So the challenge that we were trying to address when we created the Materials Pledge is that architects and designers actually have a much bigger impact outside their buildings and projects, that the materials and products that they're choosing to create their projects have huge impacts well outside the walls of those buildings. So when we created the Materials Pledge, what we were seeking to do was to define holistically sustainable materials, to stop playing whack-a-mole with what it meant to be a sustainable building material and really look at, like, okay, if there was a perfect building material, what would that mean? So what we came up with are these 5 Materials Pledge impact categories that if you had a perfectly sustainable building material, that it would support human health, climate health, ecosystem health, and social health and equity in a circular economy. Next slide. We also were really inspired by the 2030 Challenge and the AIA 2030 Commitment. What we saw with the 2030 Challenge is that it defined the aspiration. So what we created with the original Materials Pledge was a set of aspirational definitions about what holistically sustainable building materials are in each of these 5 impact categories. But we knew that that wasn't enough. Setting the finish line wasn't the goal, that we had to understand how we were making progress in getting towards that goal. So we needed a metrics and reporting system, and that's where AIA could come in and build on a similar system that they had for the AIA 2030 commitment, and to help design firms follow up the pledge and commitments they made with real data and real understanding about how they're making progress over time. So this slide is a little bit complicated, but I'm going to talk you through it. There's a whole history within which the Materials Pledge exists. Before the Materials Knowledge Working Group existed, there was a group of design firms that got together and started sending letters to manufacturers asking for health product declarations and environmental product declarations, what we came to call transparency. Can you tell us more about the building products that we're choosing from? Shortly thereafter, in 2013, the AIA started the Materials Knowledge Working Group. And in similar fashion, a few years later, a more kind of grassroots collaborative group started called Mindful Materials Collaborative. The Mindful Materials Collaborative was just a loose network of design professionals that cared about sustainable building materials. So in 2018, the AIA Materials Knowledge Working Group created the Materials Pledge statements, those sets of 5 aspirational statements. At the same time, unbeknownst to us, the manufacturers were responding to designers and architects with a letter from a group called the Living Product 50 saying, hey, this is great. We created all these health product declarations, environmental product declarations, other kinds of product certifications and disclosures to prove how sustainable our building products are, but we're not seeing the return on investment. We're not seeing that these disclosures, these definitions of sustainable materials are really resulting in you choosing our products. That gave us a perfect place to respond to the manufacturer. So the Materials Pledge ended up in a letter back to that group of manufacturers. This showed grassroots support for the Materials Pledge. So in 2020, when the Materials Pledge went before the AIA board, we could show that there was widespread grassroots support from architecture and design firms. And at that point, the AIA board unanimously adopted the A&D Materials Pledge. Shortly thereafter, the Mindful Materials grew up into a nonprofit and created the Common Materials Framework. I'm going to talk a bit more about the Common Materials Framework in a couple slides and help you understand how that's important to Materials Pledge. The official AIA Materials Pledge Working Group was established in 2023 and finally got to work on what are those metrics and reporting that we're going to do to understand how we're making progress on the commitment we made to the Materials Pledge. And at this point, reporting has started. It started last fall in 2024, and over 300 architecture and design firms have now signed on to the Materials Pledge. Go ahead. And so this is an old slide, but you can see there's just widespread support throughout the industry. Lots of architecture and design firms have signed on. And I would like to just make a pitch to this crowd that this pledge is not just for architects, it's also for interior designers, or really for anyone that's in building professional spheres that is making decisions about building materials going into projects. So what is the Common Materials Framework? The Common Materials Framework was created to support those 5 impact areas in the Materials Pledge. The Common Materials Framework is not really something new. The Common Materials Framework is really unlocking the data that exist in those environmental product declarations, health product declarations, all those product certifications and disclosures, start to map those to the 5 impact areas to create aligned impacts in each of those 5 pledge impact areas. So what Mindful Materials has grown into, it's no longer a product database. It's really a convener and collaboration space for the industry that largely is supporting the materials pledge and the work of that building product a marketplace transformation. So the common language, the common materials framework will lead to a clear market signal from design and construction professionals, and will also give workflow tools, those tech partners, a way to map their data in a way that's useful to those first two things. It gives us that kind of standardized language that we can all convene around. So one more slide talking about the common materials framework. You can see on the left side here the product certifications and disclosures is all feeding through the common materials framework and getting mapped to the 5 pledge impact areas. And excitingly, what's starting to happen now is that reporting standards and rating systems like LEED version 5 are directly reflecting both the language used in the Common Materials Framework and the 5 impact areas of the AIA Materials Pledge. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Tanya.
Hi, all. Thank you, Lana, for setting the stage of the last over a decade of materials transformation. So I had the pleasure of being the co-chair of the Materials Pledge Working Group in 2023 and 24 when we brought it from the pledge into a reporting system and fruition, right? As Lana mentioned, the vision was always to start reporting on it to measure how we're doing as an industry and provide valuable feedback and a conversation starter as well for designers and firms. So we're going to take a look at what the metrics and the reporting looks like in this section. So there's 2 broad levels of reporting. There's firm level reporting, which is currently required for all signatories. And then there's voluntary project level reporting. Since this is so new to many firms, the idea is to keep the project level reporting voluntary to make sure that the barrier for entry is accessible to the industry. So we'll look at firm level reporting first. Next slide. So the firm level reporting is really based on a resource called the Materials Pledge Starter Guide that's available online at AIA.org. You can see the link here at the bottom of the page, but you can also just search for Materials Pledge Starter Guide. And there's 5 general principles for firms of how to get started talking about materials, how to start selecting better materials, and really integrate a culture of material health at your firm. So the firm level reporting is really based on this document. So if you go to the next slide, as I mentioned, this is a resource on how your firm can really holistically evaluate building products using the materials pledge. I believe the next slide actually dives into, yes, what we're actually looking for in the reporting. So it's not meant to be, as I mentioned, a high barrier for entry. While this is required, if you're just going through and answering the questions, you could do that in 15, 20 minutes, to be honest. But what's really intended for is to start discussions at your firm around various subjects. So there's a requirement to update, or it will be a requirement in the near future, to update your firm's sustainability or climate action plan to reflect the materials pledge statement. So many firms have sustainability action plans. The materials pledge is asking that firms start to develop a component of that that is materials focused or a standalone materials action plan. Then the firm level reporting also looks at your material libraries as a firm. What are your policies? Do you do advocacy with the materials library? Have you refreshed it? Are there requirements around transparency or optimization or healthier materials for your library? Then are you implementing it in your project work? So are you making material and product selections based on the pledge criteria? Are you just starting out as a firm, and then, or are you more mature in that process and starting to layer in some more processes, maybe tracking mechanisms or other procedures? Very important. Number 4 is building literacy and education, training employees and leadership about materials at your firm. So there are questions around how much effort is expended on education efforts? How knowledgeable is your firm's leadership? How knowledgeable are your employees, et cetera? So this is good conversation starters about, how much is human health, climate health, et cetera, talked about in your firm. And then looking outward, we look at advocacy with staff, with clients, manufacturers, contractors. Are we not only implementing it at our firms, but also using it in our conversations with manufacturers? There's so many manufacturers doing such great things that, right, if we encounter a manufacturer who might not be as up to date, it's a great conversation starter, right? We need this as a firm. We're prioritizing this. Can we start seeing this from you as well, et cetera? So all of this is really meant to capture how do we get to a place where we can start having a culture of better materials and having it start to be implemented in our project work as well. So on that note, the next slide, then we also have another level of reporting, which is project level and product level. This is all voluntary. So it's a bit of a choose your own adventure. If you go to the next slide, you can select whether you want to report on a project, and if so, how many different projects. So once you're within a project, there are project level questions, strategies that pertain to the whole project, to all the materials across the board. And you could answer those and you could stop there. Or you could select to report on product types as well. So you could select to report on carpet or acoustic ceilings or concrete. It can be, there's architectural, interior, you name it. It's not limited to any product type. So you can select to report on various product types. And then within that, you can select which pledge impact categories to report on. So for example, you could report on just carpet and you want to report on the human and climate impacts of that carpet or concrete or et cetera. So we've been seeing some firms select to choose a few priority product types for their firm and always report on those. We've been seeing firms choose priority impact areas, social health and equity or human health, et cetera, and report on that for all their products. It's really what works for your firm and for your projects. So at the end of the day, there's product type questions about the products that you're selecting to report on. So I'll dive a little bit deeper into that because it can be a little bit confusing at this scale. So next slide. At the project level for project reporting, it's pretty streamlined. I think these are actually all of the questions or topics that are captured in those questions. There's just a handful. But it's looking at general material strategies such as, did you have waste diversion targets? Did you plan for end of use of life of materials or design for deconstruction? Did you design for resilience and appropriate durability, right? A project that's designed to last 7 years is very different than a project designed to last 60 years. Then we look at low emitting material selection, right? Are you choosing materials that have low emissions, certified low emissions? Also design strategies. Did you implement design strategies to reduce material usage, right? If we usually have 100 products on this job, were we able to streamline it to 70 and really focus on those, or maybe use less of a material, right? Designed to standard measurements, et cetera. There's different design techniques that really have a huge impact on material. So we're trying to reward and capture this information at the project level. Also topics of reuse, salvage, repurposing materials, and then also looking at whole building carbon reduction strategies. Then for the next level of reporting, then we get into the product types. So this is where it's a bit more of a deep dive and the real choose your own adventure here. So it's based on defined priority product types. AIA is part of the reporting guide, which I'll feature here in a few slides, did release a suggested chart of priority product types to focus on. You can choose something that's not on that chart, but we released a set of fairly common both interior and architectural products to look at that for one reason or another. They might be a priority category for a certain topic, or they're mature in the industry. There's enough information there to start reporting on. And then the questions are organized in this level reporting by the 5 pledge impact categories. So human health, climate health, social health and equity, et cetera, circular economy. Then for the 5 pledge impact categories, the questions are divided into transparency, or, is there just documentation stating what is in the product, and optimization. Are we starting to actually show that it is a better product, right? The goal of all of this is to select better products. So on the next slide, just showing how this starts to play into the common materials framework that Lana was featuring. So we have these 5 impact categories, right? They're important for products and they can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes. But when you actually start selecting products, a lot of the certifications, the alphabet soup that's out there starts to map across all of these. So I'm betting that almost every project that you have worked on, it probably has something to report, right? Whether you've actually done the digging into it or not. But a lot of products out there now have these certifications, or maybe they're a reuse or a recycled product. But for example, if you have a product with a cradle to cradle certification, that actually has an impact across all 5 impact areas. Or if you have an environmental product declaration that contributes to climate health and circular economy, et cetera. So just with a handful of products that have some of these transparency and optimization certifications, you start to actually have a good bit to report on your projects and really track the progress and be able to celebrate that as a firm. So next slide. Now into the meat of it, optimization. So transparency, as I mentioned, is just knowing what is in your product. Are there harmful chemicals? What is the impact on global warming potential, et cetera? Optimization is why we're doing this. We're all trying to get to better products that are healthy for the environment, that are healthy for people, that contribute to a circular economy, that don't have issues in their supply chain and have positive impacts on the environment. This is a big goal and a big journey and a big quest. So there are not really perfect products out there. Maybe there are, but not many of them. So what we're trying to get to is really optimization, is better products. So optimization, we do ask questions around that. And those are various definitions of products or product certifications that document that that product is doing better than your average product or your baseline type of product in that category. So we ask questions around that. And some of those certifications, like Cradle to Cradle, et cetera, contribute to optimization as well. So in a snapshot, that encapsulates all the types of questions that we're asking. If we go to the next slide. As an example of what you could expect if you start to dive in or start answering questions on a certain product type, let's say you've got acoustic ceilings in your project. You could decide to report on human health and climate health for those. And then once you do that, you start looking at transparency and optimization questions, which can seem a little intimidating, but as shown in a previous slide, it could just come down to, I have a health product declaration for this product. Great. That contributes to human health. Or I have an environmental product declaration for this product. Great. That contributes to climate health. And all of a sudden you have the documentation for 2 impact categories for a product type, if not more. So this kind of shows you the structure of the types of questions once you do a dive. Again, a lot of firms that we're seeing are taking this to really spark conversations for their firms or for their design practices to say, what are we doing? Do we have priority product types? Do we have priority impact areas that we're concentrating on? And should we? So this can be also a great conversation starter, even if you're not quite ready to start tracking this information. But if you are ready to start tracking this information, making it real implementation, unfortunately, there's no single magic answer for gathering and reporting on this information yet. But we do have a few tips. We have released a sample tracking spreadsheet that you could use to vet materials and track information. That's available through AIA as well. We don't always love spreadsheets, but they're helpful. And there's a lot of software under development as well to hopefully make this easier for our design processes in the future as well. But some tips for just implementing this on your projects. Many of your firms already have existing internal spreadsheets for vetting. You can utilize those for sure. There should be a lot of overlap. If you're pursuing LEED or other rating systems, there's also a lot of overlap, and you've already done a lot of the hard work of tracking your materials and all the corresponding information. And actually in 2020, for the data for reporting year 2023, almost 80% of reported projects were pursuing a certification. And we, guess that that's because they had the information at hand ready to report. You can also, as I mentioned, focus on priority product types. Are there certain products that have a big impact, high volume, high touch, high impact in a certain impact area, right? They have a large impact on climate health or a very large impact on human health, or impact categories as a firm. Do you want to, first tackle climate health? There's not a right or wrong answer. It's hard or difficult to do everything for every product, for every job. So we all have to start somewhere. So set a small goal and go from there. And also, as I mentioned, there's a lot of software and tools out there that are starting to become more sophisticated or more integrated across the common materials framework and speaking the same language. So the exporting data from those tools can also be very beneficial for tracking all of this. And with that, one last call out. We do have a materials pledge reporting guide. So everything I just went through, this guide goes through in more helpful detail, and it references some charts and links and such. So if you'd like to report or you're just curious about how to start looking at this for your projects, please feel free to access this free resource from AIA. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Jay to take us through some data.
All right. Thanks, Tanya. Appreciate that. Really excited to be joining you all today virtually. But here in Seattle, Sustainability Services Lead at Miller Hull. I've been participating with the Materials Pledge Working Group since its inception in 2023 and am one of the co-chairs starting this year in 2025 with Maria Pepys from Ewing Cole. So again, great to be here. And great to be talking about a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I think, as Tanya mentioned, it's worth repeating, that this work is really just trying to capture a snapshot of all and standing on the shoulders of all the great materials work that everyone has been doing over the years. And so I think we're really excited to be sharing the summary from the Materials Pledge by the Numbers report for the reporting year 2023, because I think we could probably all acknowledge that it's really hard to manage what we don't measure. And we know that our firm culture is really one of the key levers in how we prioritize holistic materials selection across our projects, depending on whatever those project types are, whatever those clients are. Every designer, architect, specifier, has a role in selecting better materials. But we also acknowledge that this work is evolving, right? So what you'll see in these slides that we're going to share, highlights some of the things we've known for a while about materials, VOC emissions, recycled content, but obviously some growth areas we've known about where we need to build literacy, certifications, or social health and equity, circularity, and ecosystem health. And so we're going to really highlight how this effort is trying to build a foundation, right? So we want to regularly be able to take this snapshot of the A&D community and share this publicly so that we have a summary of how our pledge programs for firms and the industries moving forward. And this first by the Numbers report, again, really inspired by obviously the AIA 2030 commitment reporting going back to 2011. And so for us, for a pledge program that's been around since 2018 to put together a reporting framework and have firms jumping in and reporting projects, firm and projects and products in the first year, about a third of the firms being able to do that is really exciting. And so you'll see at the QR code, you can obviously go to AIA.org and download the first annual report. And this was released in November of 2024 last year at Greenbuild. And so this analysis really highlights all the great work that firms are doing, the projects and product level information in their reporting year 2023 portfolio submission. And again, this is a report that's available to the public and really lays the foundation for the upcoming year so we can continue to massage the pledge and the reporting metrics and how we capture that information. But ideally, this is a touchstone to help us move forward and collect on recurring information so that AIA can track how we're moving from transparency into optimization. At a really high level, some takeaways, again, about over 300 reporting over 300 signatories to the Materials Pledge. And it was great to have about a third of those actively reporting for this first year. And so again, if you're new to the pledge, and we'd encourage you to dive in and roll up your sleeves and use some of the resources that Tanya talked about. And some of the things that we saw in the report at a high level, again, things that we've known for a while, right? So there's been a great progress in the material space around human health and climate health, a lot of action around environmental product declarations, health product declarations. And so again, it's not surprising that those were the most reported impact categories across the product types. And I'm going to be able to show some of those detailed points a little bit later. But I think it's also important to take away that the majority of firms that are signatories and reporting obviously have a sustainability action plan with a clear focus on materials. So capturing, the values and the intent of the firm's approach to how materials are selected, because we know, every firm has their own unique process for selecting products. And so it's great that firms are putting that information into their sustainability action plan. And then again, at a high level, realizing that for the firms that we're reporting and the projects and the product types, it's not super surprising that carpeting, resilient flooring, and acoustical ceilings were the most reported product types. And we feel like part of that is due to just the quantity of certifications, and maybe also to those product types being most prevalent in the projects and the firms that are selecting to report. And so this slide talks a little bit about, what it means to have a materials library. And so it was asking, what do you have at your firm when you select materials, when the manufacturer might come in? Do you have a gatekeeper? Do you have a digital or physical library? And it's great to see that, nearly 90% of reporting firms are asking at the front door when these products are coming in to, show the information, to understand how the product, demonstrates first and foremost transparency. Do we understand what's in that product? Where does it come from? And then maybe for some of the more advanced manufacturers, how are they demonstrating optimization? Whether it's across human health or climate health or some of the other impact categories. And so I think one of my key takeaways from this was also, understanding how firms might need to create or refresh their firm's material libraries and entry criteria. So that might be a very simple policy that your firm has as a design firm or architecture firm about what types of materials you allow in or what types of materials you might exclude. And again, that might be depending on what type of project types you do specifically, right? So it could also be, if we focus on healthcare projects, we tend to avoid, products that might impact human health negatively. And so again, this is a little bit of a, choose your own adventure, but I feel like it's great to see that, nearly 3/4 of the firms, design and architecture firms, have access to the policies, guidance, and library for materials and product specifications. And there's still work to do, I think, in what we see here around aligning libraries and entry criteria specific to the pledge statements. There's some great intent and some great start to that. But even, internally in our firm, we're, re-looking at our sustainability action plan and making sure that, we are truly talking about holistic material impacts across categories, so we don't get tunnel vision with just embodied carbon or VOC emissions. We need to be looking holistically across all the impact categories. This slide talks a little bit about, how do firms and firm leadership see themselves in understanding the impact categories that Lana shared originally? Again, human health, social health and equity, ecosystem health, climate health, and the circular economy. And not surprising, if I squint at this and see, again, the focus and long-term focus on human health and climate health, firms are feeling good about that level of knowledge. And I think that, really aligns with what we see in the industry and some growth areas I think we might all acknowledge around where firms can build some expertise and lean on, other organizations. And hopefully the pledge guides here around social health and equity, ecosystem health, and the circular economy. I think it's worth, noting that, the magnitude of firms that reported and are captured in this data was firms from around 20 to 500 employees. So obviously not all firm sizes, but I think still a good snapshot, even though the question is asking specifically about firm leadership. It feels like a great proxy, I think, for general, non-specialists, and they'll probably also, trends across sustainability teams as well about how we can, increase our subject matter expertise across all the impact categories. And again, coming back here with this information in the report about sustainability action plans in particular, this is really for me about how firms demonstrate their commitment, right? And at its core, a sustainability action plan is a statement of the company's design firm, architecture firm's approach to sustainable high performance design. And it really provides the firm an opportunity to translate values and aspirations into a comprehensive approach for changing its practice and portfolio. Where does the firm want to go? And these goals are often coupled, with a framework for how you see your firm achieving these things. And so it's great to see that, nearly all reporting firms have a sustainability action plan, many of those with materials component. And again, as Tanya and Lana shared, some great work's been done by the working group to provide some additional new resources. If you are working on your sustainability action plan reboot, or if you're new to a sustainability action plan, excellent. We've got some great high-level guides, that don't take too long to get into, and provide you some probing questions to really think about how could we capture, all of our values into a guide that talks about where we want to take the firm and how we make design decisions and specify materials in particular. And it's great that these are aligned with the other AIA climate commitments, as Kathleen has set the table for us. In the next slide, I'm just going to talk really briefly again. Tanya started the conversation around priority product types, and you'll see those again highlighted here. We currently have 22 product types. And then again, if a firm wants to report on other product type that might not be included here. And, these were really, again, setting the stage for a kind of a choose your own adventure, right? And this is for a number of reasons, felt like these product types were either, had a lot of market traction already in terms of having certifications. And so, again, as Lana pointed out, an easy on-ramp for firms who might already be capturing their material selections for these product types, either for certifications, to meet firm goals, client goals. That information would be available, and so not duplicating work there. Also, product types here that are high impact, right? So maybe high volume on a project, flooring, structural elements, mass timber, concrete, or even high touch, right? So if you're interested in reporting on a product type in your project, because you feel like it's, touches your values, or maybe you have a high volume of this product type, resilient flooring on your project, you can see how that is demonstrated here, and which impact categories are currently open for reporting for those. And so I'm going to touch on a couple of those really quickly. So for things like, one example would be concrete. And so we know right at the top there, cast in place concrete a plethora, some great movement, not just in transparency, but optimization, right, for environmental product declarations and lower carbon concrete. So that aligns obviously really well with the climate health impact category. And so again, firms can report on cast in place concrete in the climate health category. Another one might be mass timber, right? So if you're doing a project with mass timber and you want to report on ecosystem health, also social health and equity, a great way to do that that Lana shared was identifying, forestry management certification. Those check multiple boxes, and so you can see how that product type aligns with those product categories. And this is another place again where choose your own adventure might apply. There are certifications and product information, obviously, not just the most visible products on a project, those shiny products that we all like to see and design and touch and feel, but even commodity goods, right? So, rough carpentry, metal studs, we know that, there's an opportunity for every, product type to improve and be better and move towards optimization. So there's a pathway here if you are interested in reporting on those product types in your project. Many times people don't feel too bad if you're, selecting and reporting on different installation types, right? That you may not ever see in your building product, but no less important. And to close this out on the report, this is a very detailed graph identifying how each of the different product types got reported on by the firms. And so take some time, pause and chew through this. But again, it's highlighting, we got reports from nearly all of the product types, I think, which is a, confirmation that we're off to a great start. And clearly, again, we can see the importance and prevalence of reporting around human health and climate health, right, across numerous product types. And I think, this really aligns, with the previous slide where I shared around the self-reported materials pledge signatories and firm leadership knowledge. And we know that climate and human health continue to lead in both in available data and understanding. But I think it's also, important for us to acknowledge that, these other impact categories are no less important. They're opportunities not just for us as designers, interior designers, architects, specifiers, firm leadership, but also for manufacturers, right? So we want to know, because this is evolving, are we capturing the right product types? Are the impact categories that we're identifying here aligned with where firms are wanting to report, specify, and improve on material choices in their firm? And Kathleen will share at the end, how to get a hold of us and reach out to all of us about your feedback on, how the pledge is structured and the reporting information is structured. But I think I'm going to close just with saying, this is a great snapshot in time and very exciting to see the first report come through, the inaugural report by the numbers. And so we're looking forward to, the reporting this year again and in future years, so we can start to track year over year data and improvement for the AIA. And I'm going to pass the baton to Kathleen to take us from here.
Thank you, Jay, and thank you, Tanya and Lana. As we're seeking to continue to support architects and designers and working towards holistic materials selection through the AIA Materials Pledge, and how the program's evolving with reporting, we wanted to share some next steps. So our 2024 reporting year closed May 31st. And for this year, firm level questions continue to be required, and project and product level questions are strongly encouraged, but are still optional. For next year's 2025 reporting cycle, which will open in February of 2026, signatories will be required to have the materials action plan or sustainability action plan with a clear materials section, as we mentioned. And to help you develop this, we have our updated sustainability action plan resource with guidance on creating a materials action plan. And I'll share that a little bit more information on that and the link to find it in a second. As part of our ongoing resources, we'll continue to share and update sample materials tracking spreadsheets based on materials reporting metrics as they evolve, and to offer further guidance on reporting product types and impact categories. We're also seeking volunteers to join the Materials Pledge Working Group to help us continue to build and evolve the program. The deadline to apply for 2026 is June 16th. And if you're interested, please send an email to materials@aia.org. Here's more detail on the Materials Action Plan. And as Jay described, how these help firms focus on goals and timelines for selecting holistically responsible materials. As you heard, about 60% of the firms who reported to the pledge in 2024 have materials included in their sustainability action plans. So we know there's still a need for this within the design industry. Here is the link. With this QR code, you can download the Sustainability Action Plan Guide and the new Materials Action Plan resources. And of course, we certainly invite you to sign up as a pledge signatory. And this QR code takes you to our site to learn all about the pledge, read the full by the numbers report, and find all the resources that we've shared today. But before we conclude our program, I'd like to ask each of our speakers just to share a few closing thoughts or anything they'd like to add. And I'll start with Lana Rarick.
Yeah, I would just add that there's a place for everyone to get started. If you haven't signed the pledge yet, go ahead and go sign the pledge. If you sign the pledge and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is too much, I can't do all this. There's a place to get started. Start with firm level reporting. Start looking at your materials action plan for your firm. Are you starting by grading your specifications? You're starting by looking at library criteria. Are you creating some guides or just bringing in some education for the people that you work with? There's always a place to start, and we're all in this together. And the other thing I would just say is none of us are very far ahead on this. We're all working through this kind of big transformation and shift in how we approach materials as design and construction professionals. So there's room for everyone.
Thank you, Lana. Tanya Eagle, what would you like to share?
I think I would just build off of what Lana said. I feel like, I often hear that this, better materials doesn't necessarily apply to me in my work, or it doesn't apply to this industry, or, right, it's too difficult, there's too much jargon, alphabet soup. And I would just echo what Lana says, that there's always a place to start. And that there are a lot of manufacturers and a lot of organizations and software. A lot of people are doing great things. So even if, you dabbled in this a couple of years ago, there's been a lot of progress and a lot of new development. So I think it's a really exciting time to be looking at materials and product selection. Also, as Lana said, right, you can start small. You don't have to do everything. It can be one product, one angle, human health, climate health, something, just to get started. And really the intent of the Materials Pledge was twofold. One, to track our progress as an industry and provide useful feedback and know, we're in this together. We're all trying to figure it out. But the second part was just to spark discussion and spark an outline of how to start defining better materials and what kind of questions we should be asking if we're trying to find better materials and specify better materials. So it was fully intended to be a discussion piece, not just a tracking mechanism. So hopefully, if you take a look, you'll find it useful for the types of things you can be assessing when you look at materials. And again, we're in an exciting place, right? It costs too much, it takes too much time. There's a lot of new tools and resources out there, and you're probably actually already implementing some of this without knowing this. If you're specifying products from, some of your major manufacturers, a lot of them are already doing work around this. So just get started small.
Great, thank you. And Jay Heinmarsh, how about you?
Oh yeah, thanks, Kathleen. Yeah, just echoing Lana and Tanya. I just want to fully acknowledge, like, this materials work is still hard and laborious, and we're all still learning. And so I feel, for me, that's still to see the collective action of firms across the country. I feel like that's, my takeaway every time I look at that slide with all the logos, even though there's, many more that already need to be on there. It's a little bit out of date. There's, again, Tanya said, like, great work that's happening both in the design community and in the manufacturing community around these topics. And some of the most rich conversations I've had about this, have been both internally, right? As we think about how do we specify products, how do firms specify products, how do we pick things and understand the impacts of those, much less keep track of those things. Because again, each firm has their own way of doing that. Tools are continually being developed, which is really exciting, to help us minimize the amount of time that it takes, not just for certification, but even just when I'm researching building products, and what am I keeping track of? And oh, by the way, if I'm seeing that manufacturers are, caring about the same kinds of things, how do we communicate with each other so that we can arrive at the end goal, holistic material that's optimized faster? And I think, the other piece, there's space here in the pledge. If you're interested in salvage materials, material reuse, new fandangled, bio-based materials, which can mean many different things. I think what we're hopeful is that there's space in the pledge and the reporting structure that will continue to evolve and capture the great work that firms are doing, designers are doing every day, specifiers are doing, firm leaders are doing around, continuing to move the ball forward on this, and just, jump in, roll up your sleeves, get involved, reach out with questions, but understand that, you're part of a larger community, and, we're all learning and excited still about this. So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much once again to each of our presenters, Lana Rarick, Tanya Eagle, Jay Heinmarsh. And once again, we appreciate everyone's participation, all attendees' participation in this session. If you have any questions for us on the Materials Pledge or any of our resources, don't hesitate to contact us by email at the email address on the screen, materials@aia.org.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this session. Before logging off, please complete the 10-question quiz via the Take Quiz button. Remember to hit submit. Once completed, for AIA members, attendance is recorded and reported for 1 LU or HSW credits. For IDCEC members, attendance is self-reported. For any questions, please contact NeoCon CFP@themart.com.